Hello, and this was actually meant to be last week's figure vid, but I dropped it and I broke it. So, how do you break a bones miniature? Yes, I know, shock horror. Didn't think it was possible, but hey, we're Kritfayle. Kritfayle by name, Kritfayle by nature. We find a way. And so it took a little bit of work to fix, which is why it was a week late. Now, this is a Bones figure from Reaper Miniatures. It's an Elf Ranger, and it came in one of the dragon boxes. There's a really cool dragon which I have with 6, I think, figures it came with, and it's one of those. Now, I've started playing D&D with my daughter at Wood for Sheep. We do that on Thursdays. So I decided I'd play an Elf Ranger, and I had him, so I painted him up. As figures go, I quite like him overall. He was quite interesting. Didn't quite fit the normal Elf Ranger, which is what I liked. A lot of Elf Rangers sort of follow very similar patterns with how they're designed, and this one was kind of different. I do like the pose as well. It's very dramatic. He's actually comes with just a small base around the bottom, so I added a spare base that I had, and then built up a little bit of rock around the rock that came with the base, so that it was a bit more stable. Being on the game table and moved a lot, it's very easy to fall over if it's just a narrow base that he came on. Bones can sometimes feel a little soft on the detail, and while I don't think it's quite as good as the metal version of this figure, there is a metal version of this figure if you look for it, but the detail's actually quite nice. I decided to keep with a sort of overall rangery paint scheme of greens and browns. What I broke was the cape. So my first thing was I looked to see what other figures I had, if there was anything that I could steal from those, but there wasn't. I broke out the milli putt and attempted to do some sculpting. So I had to sculpt the rear cape, and I split it into two and flared it a bit, and it looks okay. I won't say it looks great. I'm not a sculptor at all. But I'm happy with what it is, and for a tabletop gaming mini, it works quite fine. He sells for about $2.95 in the bones, and I think about $6.99 for the metal. Both are good value, but for $2.95 he's excellent. So I decided that he was the sole survivor of a patrol, and that one of the ones that had been killed had a powerful father, and she was his only daughter, and in his grief they needed to blame someone, and Kritfayle got the blame for not spotting the attack, even though he was as much at fault or not at fault as every other one that was there, but because he lived, he took the blame. So he's been wandering the world a bit. He was exiled, and I decided that all of his arrows that he would use I painted black, because he uses orc arrows when he can find them, and just black arrows when he can't, as a way of giving them back to orcs whenever he can find them. So I like it. These are fun figures, they're cheap. If you need a table of orcs, normally you'd have to pay, you could spend $50 for an orc war party for an RP, but you'd get out of it with $15 to $20 with the Reaper Bones. They're such a good value for money, and there's a lot in the range now, and it's growing all the time, and there's going to be all the ones from the Bones 3 Kickstarter coming into it, and so there's going to be a big influx of new figures into the Bones range. And the other thing that's great about these is at $2.95, if you want to try sculpting, I didn't intend to, but I mean, it was sort of thrust on me by mistakes, as it were. You can do it. You can have a go and not feel terrible. If it's a $20 figure and you've never sculpted before, you might not want to, try to do that, but at $2.95 it's worth a go. And if it turns out you've learned something, then it might even look okay. And if you're trying to learn other aspects of figure painting, again, at $2.95, even if you screw up so bad, which is kind of hard to do, But if you do, if you hit it so bad where you so hate it and you think you've done so much wrong that you cannot fix under any circumstances, at most you would have spent $2.95. So I can't recommend these enough, really. Is there other figures that I think are better? Yeah, I do. But do I think that those figures are anywhere near the value for money that these bones offer? No, I don't. Now, if you want a really, really cool on-the-table character, then yeah, some of those $20 figures are interesting, and if that's going to be your main character, yeah, it might be worth investing in that. But at the same time, you have to decide, is it, 5 times better than the Bones figure? Because if it's not, you might be better off just going with the Bones figure, and you don't worry as much if something happens to it. $2.95 on the table. If you're doing a show figure, yeah, I wouldn't buy a Bones for that. Although I've won 2 awards with Bones figures now, so they can paint up nice. They do hold the paint, but I think that the details is a little crisper on the metal, and obviously on the resin figures. So if you're going to do shows and that, if you're really going for show pieces, then I would do other things. But for your games, oh my god, if you're a D&D player and you need, instead of getting counters and that, you could almost pay. It's going to be a little bit more expensive, but not drastically so. But if you take some of these pawn counters, like these sort of things, some of the packs available for those sort of things are not that cheap. And you'll get less figures for the same money, but it won't be drastically less. And you'd have an actual figure on the table rather than just a piece of cardboard. So I really recommend looking at Reaper miniatures for just all sorts of things. They have so many different types of miniatures there. Nothing military. If you're a military guy, you definitely need to look at Warlord. If you want 28mm, I recommend them. And if you're looking at bigger scales than that, then yeah, you're going to have to look at your regular sort of military places and that. But if you're into gaming, D&D, or any other fantasy one and that, then for sure check out Reaper. Even if you don't paint them, they come white, and if you don't paint them, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with not painting them for your game table. I think it's more fun if you do, but there's nothing wrong with not doing that. So there he is. He is all done.